Kevin Turner didn't believe in fate until the day he held the elevator for a woman carrying a gold lamp, a suitcase, and a cat in a designer carrier. "Moving in?" he asked, adjusting the paper grocery bag in his arm while his 5-year-old daughter clung to his other hand. "Looks like it." The woman smiled, breathless. "4th floor. You live here?" "3rd. I'm Kevin. This is my daughter, Sophie." Sophie peeked out from behind his leg. "Is your cat nice?" "She's mean to everyone but me," the woman said with a wink. "I'm Olivia." Olivia Dalton. The elevator doors closed, and Kevin's heart dropped a little too fast for someone who'd just met a neighbor. She had this effortless glow, high cheekbones, glossy hair swept into a bun, a laugh that sounded expensive. But she was friendly, real, not the usual big city cold. He didn't know that the lamp she carried was from a Paris boutique, or that the suitcase held enough silk to pay his rent for 6 months. He didn't know she was a millionaire. All he knew was she smelled like vanilla and oranges, and she smiled at Sophie like she actually saw her. The building wasn't fancy. Peeling paint, clunky radiators. But it was safe, and Kevin worked hard to keep it that way. He was a single dad juggling early shifts at the mechanic shop and late nights managing deliveries for a catering company. His ex had left town when Sophie was 2, and he hadn't heard from her since. He barely had time to breathe, let alone date. But for the next few days, his routine cracked. Because Olivia kept showing up. Not in a creepy way. In a happens to be their way. At the mailbox. In the laundry room. On the stairs when he was carrying Sophie piggyback. She always had a book in her hand or a grocery bag from some market he couldn't pronounce. She wore sunglasses even when it was cloudy. But she talked to him like none of that mattered. "You're the only person who's talked to me since I moved in," she said one afternoon while Sophie danced in the hallway with a juice box. Kevin shrugged. "People around here keep to themselves." "You don't." He paused. "I guess I don't." She smiled like he'd passed some secret test. By the end of the week, Olivia had met Sophie's stuffed unicorn, eaten 2 slices of Kevin's famous grilled cheese, and helped him fix a leaky garbage disposal in her apartment. "You know," she said, crouching beside him under the sink, "you're kind of amazing." He laughed. "You think fixing your pipes makes me amazing? I think you're a single dad holding it all together in a city that doesn't make that easy. That's more than amazing." He didn't know what to say. Most women didn't stick around long enough to see the mess behind the smile. But Olivia, she saw everything. And somehow, she didn't look away. One night, Olivia knocked on his door holding a tray of brownies. "I made too many." Kevin raised an eyebrow. "You made brownies?" She blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I just figured. You probably DoorDash your dessert." "Wow, that's a judgment." He grinned. "Just an observation." "Well, observe this," she said, handing him the tray. "They're good. And I used real cocoa." Sophie ran over, already smudging her fingers in chocolate. "Can she watch a movie with us?" Kevin looked at Olivia. "You don't have to." "I'd love to," she said, stepping inside. That night, they watched a Disney movie on the hand-me-down couch. Olivia curled her legs underneath her, laughing at all the wrong moments. Sophie fell asleep halfway through, her head on Kevin's lap. "Is this what real life feels like?" Olivia whispered. He turned to her, surprised. "What do you mean?" She looked around his tiny living room, the mismatched furniture, the scuffed coffee table, the toys in the corner. "It's messy but warm. Loud but safe. I've never had that." Kevin didn't ask what she meant. He just handed her a blanket. The next morning, Olivia was gone before Sophie woke up. But she left a note on the counter. "Thanks for letting me borrow a little piece of real." "Oh." He smiled, folding the paper. A week passed. Then another. They saw each other more: grocery runs, elevator rides, walks to the park. Olivia started bringing fancy snacks that Sophie loved and Kevin couldn't pronounce. She carried herself like someone who'd been everywhere but still wanted to be here. Kevin didn't ask about her past. She didn't ask about his. But things slipped out. That her dad was a hotel tycoon. That she'd walked away from the company 2 years ago. That she didn't miss the money, just missed being seen as more than it. One night, she said, "I've never met someone who looked at me the way Sophie does. Like I'm just a person." Kevin looked at her for a long time. "You are." She smiled. "You're the first man who's told me that." One Friday, Olivia asked if she could take Sophie to the bookstore while Kevin worked a double shift. "I can't pay you," he said quickly. "I didn't ask for money. I just want to spend time with her." He hesitated. "You'd really do that?" "I'd love to." Sophie beamed. Kevin handed over a list of emergency contacts, allergy info, and a pack of wipes. Don't let her talk you into buying 20 books. No promises. They came home with 7 books, 2 cupcakes, and matching scarves. Sophie ran into his arms. Olivia leaned against the doorframe. I think she's trying to adopt me. Kevin laughed. She's picky. You should feel honored. That night, after Sophie went to bed, Kevin washed dishes while Olivia stood beside him, drying. I've never felt this happy, she said softly. He looked over at her. Me either. Their hands touched. Neither moved. But happiness has a way of making people nervous. And Kevin, he wasn't used to things going right. So when Olivia mentioned she was leaving town for a few days for family stuff, he just nodded. Will you be okay? She asked. He smiled, too quick. We'll manage. But the second the door closed behind her, the apartment felt cold again. And he didn't know why his chest felt like it was missing something. He didn't know that Olivia's return would change everything. Olivia returned on a Tuesday morning, stepping out of a black car that didn't belong to anyone in the neighborhood. Sophie spotted her first from the window and bolted to the door barefoot, waving wildly. Kevin, still tightening the cap on a thermos, looked up just in time to see Olivia crouch and catch Sophie in her arms. You were gone forever, Sophie declared. Olivia laughed, but her voice caught. 3 days is forever now? Kevin stood back, unsure if he should interrupt. Olivia looked different, tired, like she hadn't slept right. She wore jeans and a plain sweater, but there was something heavy about her shoulders. Everything okay? He asked as she stood, her hand still on Sophie's back. Mostly. Family things. My father had a minor health issue. He's recovering. Kevin nodded slowly. You want to come in? Olivia glanced at the building, then back at him. If you've got coffee. Inside, Sophie settled into a coloring book while Kevin poured 2 mugs. Olivia stood at the window, staring out at the street like it was the first time she'd truly seen it. He's not minor, she said eventually. The doctors say he'll be fine, but he's not the same. He asked me to come back to work. Take over. Kevin leaned against the counter. You thinking about it? I haven't decided. Her hand gripped the coffee cup. I thought leaving meant I was free. But now, it feels like I owe him something. You don't owe anyone your peace. She looked at him then, eyes searching. You always say things like that. Like the truth is simple. It usually is. We just don't like hearing it. She smiled faintly. You ever think about leaving? Every time I mop the stairs. He paused. But then I come home, and Sophie runs into my arms like I just landed from the moon. And I remember why I stay. Olivia's gaze dropped to the table. You're lucky. No, I just know what matters. Later that week, Kevin came home to find a folded piece of paper taped to his door. It wasn't Olivia's handwriting. It was a formal envelope from the building's landlord. He opened it slowly, heart already sinking. Rent increase. Substantial. Effective next month. Inside their apartment, Sophie was building a tower of blocks. Kevin sat down hard on the edge of the couch, staring at the paper. They couldn't afford the new rent. Not without cutting groceries. Or worse, childcare. He didn't say anything to Olivia that night when they passed in the hallway. Didn't mention it when she offered him half of a lemon tart she couldn't finish. He just nodded, thanked her, and went inside. But she noticed. The next day, she knocked on his door, holding a small envelope. I know it's none of my business, she said, but I saw that letter. The rent hike. Kevin tensed. It's fine. We'll figure it out. I'd like to help. No, it's not charity, Kevin. It's just kindness. I don't take money from people I'm not married to. Olivia blinked. Well, that's specific. He exhaled. I appreciate the offer. Really? But this is my responsibility. I'm not trying to take that from you. I know, but I need to stand on my own. Sophie needs to see that. Olivia nodded slowly. Okay, I respect that. She turned to go, then paused. If you change your mind, the envelope's in the mailbox room, tucked behind the fire extinguisher. She left without waiting for a response. The days passed. Kevin worked extra shifts, came home later, left earlier. He looked exhausted. Sophie asked why they didn't go to the park anymore. He promised they would soon. Olivia didn't push, but she was always near. She brought Sophie a scarf she'd knitted herself badly, she admitted. She made soup and left it at their door in mason jars. She never asked again about the rent. One afternoon, Sophie came home from school unusually quiet. Kevin knelt to take off her shoes. You okay? She looked up. Miss Tyler said we might have to move. Because you work too much. Kevin's heart clenched. Who told her that? She said you're tired and we don't have a backyard. She said other kids do. Kevin pulled her into his arms. We're not moving, kiddo. Not unless we choose to. You hear me? But what if we don't choose to? He couldn't answer. That night, he sat in the empty hallway outside his apartment, head in his hands. He didn't hear Olivia approach until she sat beside him, silent. Do you want to know where I really went? She asked softly. He didn't look up. My father owns a chain of luxury hotels. Dalton Properties. Kevin turned his head slightly. That's your last name. I walked away from all of it. The board, the stocks, the expectations. I wanted real. I wanted to know who I was without the money. He was quiet for a long time. Why are you telling me this now? Because I don't want to lie to you. And because I think you deserve to know that if you fall, I'll be there. I told you I don't need saving. I'm not offering to save you. I'm offering to stand beside you. Kevin looked at her then. You're a millionaire. Yes. And you chose this building? I chose you. His throat tightened. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you make your daughter feel like the center of the universe. I know you'd rather suffer than take a handout. I know you make the best grilled cheese I've ever had. He laughed once, quietly. That's a low bar. She smiled, but her voice was steady. I'm in love with you, Kevin. It's not convenient. It's not practical. But it's true. The words hit him like a wave. He hadn't let himself think that far. He hadn't dared. I don't know if I can give you what you're used to, he said finally. I don't want what I'm used to. I want this. She reached over and took his hand. And for the first time in weeks, Kevin let himself breathe. Kevin didn't sleep that night. After Olivia's confession, he'd walked her back to her apartment in silence, heart pounding so loudly it drowned out every rational thought. She hadn't pushed. She'd only squeezed his hand once before disappearing behind her door. Now, hours later, he stood in the kitchen watching the coffee pot fill, eyes red from thinking too hard and too long. Sophie was still curled up in bed, her bear tucked under her chin. The quiet of the morning couldn't settle his mind. He hadn't expected her to say those words. Not like that. Not so plainly. He wanted her. That wasn't the problem. The problem was everything else. The world she came from. The way Sophie's shoes had holes he hadn't noticed until last week. The way his bills barely balanced on good months. The way her coat had a lining softer than his best blanket. When Sophie padded into the room, rubbing her eyes, he poured her juice and kissed the top of her head. He didn't say anything about Olivia. Not yet. Not until he understood what came next. By noon, he was at the garage, elbows deep in a transmission. The clatter of tools didn't stop his thoughts from circling. Every time he reached for a wrench, he remembered the way Olivia had looked at him in that hallway like he was something steady in a world full of shifting ground. Earth to Turner, his boss called from across the bay. Someone's here for you. Kevin wiped his hands and stepped out into the office. Olivia stood by the front desk, holding a paper bag and a coffee that wasn't from the corner bodega. Her hair was pulled into a braid, and she wore a coat that probably cost more than his rent, but she looked nervous. Unsure. I brought lunch, she said. You didn't have to. I wanted to. He glanced at the bag. Is it edible? She gave him a look. I'm not completely incompetent. Didn't say you were. She shifted, her voice lower. I didn't sleep much. He nodded. Me either. I meant what I said. I know. She hesitated. Do you? He exhaled. Come with me. They stepped outside into the alley behind the garage, where the noise was duller. Kevin leaned against the brick wall, arms crossed. I'm not just scared for me, he said. I'm scared for Sophie. She's already been left once. I'm not going anywhere. You say that now. But you live in a world with private drivers and penthouses. I live in one where I count change at the corner store. I chose this place, Kevin. I chose it for a reason. Why? Because I was tired of pretending I cared about things I didn't. Because I wanted something real, and I found it in a hallway with a man who didn't flinch when I dropped a lamp on his foot. He cracked a smile despite himself. That was a heavy lamp. I panicked. You didn't even curse. I was trying to impress the cat. Her face softened. Let me be part of your life. He looked down at his boots. I'm not used to needing people. Needing someone doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. He met her gaze. I don't want Sophie hurt. Then let's not hurt her. That night, Olivia stayed for dinner. Not just dropped by, stayed. She helped Sophie with homework while Kevin cooked. She didn't hover, didn't interrupt. She asked questions, listened, smiled when Sophie got excited about space facts. When the food was ready, Olivia pulled out cloth napkins from her bag. You brought napkins? I came prepared. Kevin raised an eyebrow. You always carry tableware? Just on emotionally significant days. After Sophie went to bed, Olivia helped him load the dishwasher. Her hand brushed his, and he didn't pull away this time. She really likes you, he said. I really like her. He swallowed. And me. She leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. More than I know what to do with. He kissed her. It was slow, uncertain at first, then deepened into something that had been building for weeks, something quiet and desperate and completely real. When they pulled back, neither spoke for a long moment. Eventually, she said, that was overdue. He nodded. Yeah. The next morning, Olivia offered to walk Sophie to school. Kevin hesitated then agreed. Watching them go, Sophie's hand in Olivia's, her pink backpack bouncing, something settled in his chest. Like maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something solid. Later that week, Kevin came home to an envelope on the kitchen table, the same one Olivia had mentioned before. He hadn't realized Sophie had found it. She'd drawn a heart on the outside in crayon. Inside was a check. He stared at the number, breath-catching. It wasn't just enough to cover the rent, it was enough to erase every debt he had and buy time to breathe. He hated it. He folded the check and put it back in the envelope. When Olivia arrived that evening, he held it out to her. I can't take this. I didn't give it to you. I gave it to Sophie. You know what I mean. Kevin, it's not about the money. It's about what it can do. Would you take it if it meant not having to leave this place? I can't build something with you if I'm always wondering what I owe you. You don't owe me anything. That's not how it'll feel. She stepped closer. Then let me help in other ways. Like how? Let me invest in you. Not with money, with time. With space. With belief. He searched her face. You really think we can make it work? She didn't blink. I know we can. There was no dramatic music, no spotlight, but in that moment, standing in his kitchen with the fridge humming and the faucet dripping, Kevin realized he believed her. For the first time in years, hope didn't feel like a luxury. It felt like a promise. By mid-April, the city had started to thaw, sidewalks no longer slick with ice, and trees lining the block shook out cautious buds like they were testing the promise of spring. Kevin stood at the window, watching Sophie chase a bubble wand Olivia had given her last week. She was laughing so hard she couldn't catch her breath, and Olivia was right behind her, arms wide, pretending to miss on purpose. He didn't remember the last time his apartment had felt this full. Not with noise, he was used to noise, but with possibility. With something forward-looking, like maybe the future wasn't just a calendar he flipped each month. That night, Olivia stayed late. Kevin had cooked again, and afterward they sat on the fire escape while Sophie slept, legs stretched out, a blanket around their shoulders. The city buzzed beneath them, windows glowing gold. I never asked, Olivia said, nudging his knee with hers. What did you want to be before all this? He looked down at the street, then at her. A pilot. I used to steal my brother's National Geographics and trace the flight plans in the ads. She smiled. That actually makes perfect sense. Yeah? How? You're always looking out for other people. Pilots do that. Keep everyone steady when the ground isn't there. He reached over and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. What did you want to be? A photojournalist. I used to beg to borrow my mom's old camera and take pictures of everything. My father hated it. Said it was a waste of time to watch the world instead of shaping it. Kevin didn't answer right away. Then he said, You take beautiful pictures. I've seen them. Her eyes widened. You looked through my portfolio? No. They're framed in your hallway. She laughed. You notice everything. I notice you. She leaned in, brushing her lips against his. I'm glad you said that. 3 days later, a formal invitation arrived, delivered by hand, no postage, on thick parchment with a wax seal. Kevin opened it at the kitchen table, brow furrowed. Olivia watched his reaction carefully as he read. You're being honored? He asked. She nodded. My father's stepping down officially. There's a gala. They're announcing me as the interim chair of the board. He set the card down. That's big. I want you to come. He rubbed the back of his neck. Liv, I wouldn't know how to blend in at something like that. You don't need to blend in. I want you to stand beside me. Sophie, she's invited too. There'll be other families. It's not as stiff as it sounds. He looked at her, searching for signs of pressure or pity. He found none. She only looked hopeful. All right, he said eventually. We'll come. When the night arrived, Olivia met them in the building lobby. She wore a navy gown with delicate silver threading, and Kevin stared a beat too long before catching himself. Sophie tugged at his hand, beaming in a soft blue dress Olivia had helped her choose. "You both look like magic," Olivia said, her voice warm. Kevin adjusted his tie. "And you look like the moon showed up just to compete with you." Her eyes shone. "Are you trying to make me cry before we even leave?" The car that waited outside was long and sleek, driven by someone who nodded and opened the doors without a word. At the venue, a glass-walled rooftop in Midtown, they were ushered through a velvet-lined corridor into a ballroom filled with crystal chandeliers and strings of lights that flickered like stars. Kevin held Sophie's hand tightly, scanning the room with practiced caution. Olivia leaned in. "You don't have to be nervous. They're just people. People who probably flew in on jets." She smiled. "And yet, you're the one who makes me feel like I'm flying." The announcement came an hour in. Olivia stepped onto the stage with quiet confidence, her voice steady as she accepted the interim role and thanked her father, who sat in the front row with a cane resting beside him. Kevin watched her, heart full. She didn't boast or perform. She spoke like someone who knew who she was finally. Afterward, she returned to their table, cheeks flushed. Kevin stood. "You were incredible." She took his hand. "I was terrified. No one could tell." "Good. Because I've never wanted anything more than to be worthy of this." "You already are." Sophie yawned beside them, her curls slipping from the clip Olivia had fastened earlier. "Can we go home?" she asked sleepily. "Yeah, baby," Kevin said, lifting her into his arms. Olivia reached for his hand. "Let's go." The ride back was quiet. Sophie fell asleep against Kevin's shoulder, and Olivia rested her head lightly against his. When they reached the building, Olivia walked them up and stayed until Sophie was tucked in. In the hallway, Kevin lingered near his door. "I don't want this to end," he said. "It doesn't have to. I don't want to be your secret. You're not. You never were." She took a deep breath. "That's why I told my father I'm stepping down permanently. I'm not going back to that world, not in the way they expect." He blinked. "You're giving it up?" "I already have everything I want. And none of it's in a boardroom." He took a step closer. "What does that mean?" "It means I want a life with you, Kevin. Not in pieces. All of it. You, Sophie, the grilled cheese, the noise, the fire escape. Everything." His voice was low. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, square box, weathered, old. He opened it slowly. Inside sat a silver ring with a modest diamond. "I bought this 3 years ago," he said. "I didn't know who it was for. I just knew I'd know when it was time." She stared at him, eyes wide. "I don't have a yacht or a family name worth putting on buildings," he continued. "But I love you. And I love who I am when I'm with you. Will you marry me?" Tears welled up instantly. She nodded so hard her earrings shook. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, Kevin, yes." He slipped the ring on her finger, and she kissed him like he was the only solid thing in the world. From behind the door, Sophie's sleepy voice called out, "Did someone say Mary?" They laughed, and Olivia wiped her eyes. "We'll tell her in the morning." Kevin held her hand tightly. "She's going to be so happy. So am I." And with the city blinking beneath them, they stood together in a hallway where it had all begun. A mechanic with nothing but his heart, and a millionaire who finally found something money couldn't buy. A home. A family. A love worth giving everything for. 3 months after Kevin slipped the ring on Olivia's finger, the apartment had changed in ways that could only be felt, not seen. The furniture was still the same. The floorboards still creaked. But the air carried a steadiness now. A quiet certainty. Kevin stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, whisking batter in a mixing bowl while Sophie balanced on a stool beside him, cracking eggs with the precision of a surgeon and the mess of a child. Olivia leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching them. "You two are dangerously efficient," she said. Kevin looked up. "We're building a legacy. Pancakes today. Empire tomorrow." Sophie giggled. "Can I be in charge of chocolate chips?" Kevin nodded solemnly. "It's a sacred role." Olivia crossed the room and kissed his cheek without asking. "Any chance I can sneak one before they hit the griddle?" Sophie held up a spoonful. "Only if you say the magic word." "Please," Olivia said, stealing a chip and popping it into her mouth. "Also, I have some news." Kevin raised an eyebrow. "Good news." "Depends. Are you interested in a wedding venue?" He blinked. "Already. I found a place I love. It's not flashy. It's this old greenhouse in Brooklyn. Overgrown ivy, glass panels, string lights. It feels like us." "Is there parking?" "Yes. Then I'm sold. Sophie clapped. Do I get to wear a dress? You're the flower girl, Olivia said. You get to pick your own dress, shoes, and basket. Kevin looked at her. You're just giving her full control? Olivia grinned. I've learned to pick my battles. A week later, they visited the greenhouse together. The caretaker, an elderly woman named Maritza, gave them a tour, her cane tapping against the stone path. The place was magic. Vines curled through broken beams, sunlight filtered through stained glass. It looked like a secret waiting to be discovered. Sophie ran ahead, arms stretched like wings. She's happy, Olivia said quietly. Kevin glanced at her. She is. You think she understands what this means? Us. She knows what love looks like. Maritza stopped beside them. You two getting married? Kevin nodded. She looked at Olivia. You're the one who used to be famous. Olivia blinked. I'm not sure I was ever famous. I recognize your face. From a magazine. You look different now. Better or worse? Better. You look like you stopped pretending. The day of the wedding arrived on a warm Saturday morning, sun high and unapologetic. Olivia stood in the greenhouse's tiny dressing room, her gown hanging from a brass hook, soft and simple. No jewels. No train. Just delicate fabric and clean lines. Her mother adjusted the strap on her shoulder. You look like yourself. Olivia caught her mother's gaze in the mirror. That's the goal. You sure this is what you want? No regrets. None. I've never been more certain of anything. Outside, Kevin stood under the canopy of vines in a tailored navy suit, his hands folded in front of him. He borrowed a pocket square from his brother and wore cufflinks Olivia had given him the night before. Sophie stood beside him in a dress covered in hand-sewn daisies, gripping her flower basket like it was a treasure chest. When Olivia stepped into the garden, the chatter died. Every guest turned. But Kevin didn't notice any of them. He saw only her. Hair pinned back with lavender, eyes locked on his, mouth curved in a smile that still knocked the breath out of him. Sophie whispered, She looks like a princess. Kevin didn't take his eyes off Olivia. She is. The ceremony was short, filled with quiet laughter and sincere vows. Olivia spoke first. I spent a long time trying to prove I was enough without needing anyone. But you showed me that being loved doesn't make me smaller. It makes me stronger. You and Sophie are my home. Kevin's voice caught once, but he didn't stop. I thought I had to hold everything together on my own. But then you walked into my life and proved that love doesn't make you weak, it gives you something worth holding on to. I promise to choose you every day, even when life gets messy. Especially then. They kissed under a sky full of string lights and applause. Sophie threw her flowers in the air, missing the timing, but no one cared. Afterward, they danced barefoot on the flagstone floor, guests swaying around them, laughter spilling into the night. At one point, Kevin lifted Sophie in his arms and twirled her while Olivia laughed beside them, her hands wrapped around his waist. This, Olivia whispered into his chest, is everything I didn't know I needed. Kevin kissed the top of her head. And you're everything I didn't think I deserved. Weeks passed, and their lives never returned to normal. Because normal had changed. Kevin still worked at the garage, but fewer shifts now. He'd started a small side business fixing vintage motorcycles, a passion Olivia encouraged with quiet enthusiasm. Olivia spent time consulting for nonprofits, finally using her degree in ways that felt meaningful. She never returned to corporate. Their new apartment was modest but bright, a two-bedroom with a small balcony where Olivia grew herbs in mismatched pots. Sophie had her own room, walls covered in constellations and fairy lights. The three of them spent evenings tangled on the couch, reading aloud from whatever books Sophie had picked that week. One Saturday afternoon, Kevin came home early with paint on his shirt and a grin tugging at his mouth. I did something, he said, setting down a paper folder. Olivia opened it and stared. Inside were the permits for a small shop front. The name on the application read, Turner and Company. Custom Restorations. You're opening your own shop? She asked. He nodded. It's time. I want Sophie to know her dad didn't just survive. He built something. Olivia wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him long and slow. She already knows that. But that's going to show her how far love can take you. The night ended with the three of them on the balcony, the city humming below, a breeze warm and sweet. Sophie was curled up between them, already dozing, and Kevin had one arm around Olivia, the other around his daughter. I used to think happy endings were for other people, Olivia whispered. Kevin kissed her temple. Turns out, They were just waiting for the right chapter. And there, surrounded by the quiet certainty of their love, they wrote the rest of their story one heartbeat at a time together. Forever.